afternoon or good evening to our colleagues in India. We're grateful that you've joined us. The sun is shining. Is it coming through? I'm just kidding. There we go. The sun is shining here in Toronto, and we're really thrilled to be starting our third webinar for the Circle of Cleft Professionals, and this very special guest who we'll introduce in a second. So if this is the first time that you're joining a Circle of Cleft Professionals webinar, today's focus is on mentoring online with Dr. Maria Carmen Pamplona. And overall, our goal of meeting together is to facilitate collaboration and networking among people working in the cleft field, communicate the impact and learning that's occurring within comprehensive cleft care projects, and to support local teams, and especially local teams in low and middle income contexts as they implement comprehensive cleft care. So welcome again today. So for our agenda, we will be finished definitely within an hour. So if you have other things on the go today, which most of us do, you can be sure of that. We'll hear from Dr. Maria Carmen Pamplona in just a few minutes. We will have quite a bit of time for questions and discussion. That's part of our philosophy at the Circle of Cleft Professionals, is to give lots of time for interaction, for questions. I know that several people who have been part of the research and mentoring that Dr. Maria Carmen Pamplona have been up to are on this call and will want to contribute as well. And we'll invite you at the end of this to continue the discussion online. So many of you have checked out Slack, but we'll give another invitation and some quick pointers for how to get involved in taking the learning beyond just this webinar. It won't be too long before we move to another webinar focused on India, and that's about embracing comprehensive cleft care with Dr. Jayant from ABMSS Cleft Charity, and that will be coming up on June 11th. So welcome, and that's our agenda for today. A quick update for those of you who are following along. We do have several international charity supporters who are coming together to make sure that the word about the Circle of Cleft Professionals is spread, and we're very invested in seeing good comprehensive cleft care learning and practice happening around the world. So you can see a list of who we're thrilled to be working with in this project so far. And if move on to the next slide to show you who's interested. So far, you can see that we have lots of surgeons and lots of speech therapists or speech pathologists. And so our last webinar, as many of you know, was on the 3D simulator, cleft simulator surgery model with a few colleagues from University of Toronto Sick Kids Hospital, Dr. Zucker and Dr. Forrest. And now we're focusing a little bit more on the context of speech therapy, a key discipline and obviously represented in our ranks. So we'll need to keep thinking about a webinar for orthodontics folks as well as we look down the list of popularity. But we're over 100 cleft professionals on 5 continents that have applied, and we're really thrilled to continue to see this forum grow. Without further ado, if we go to the next slide, Becca, I'd like to introduce Dr. Maria Carmen Pamplona, who over the last year or so has been running a mentorship program for speech-language pathologists throughout Latin America. And this included both theoretical information and supervised practice with the goal of boosting SLP satisfaction with their own professional practice in cleft and also increasing and growing their skills and knowledge. So Dr. Maria Carmen Pamplona, thanks for joining us today. And I think we'll pass all over the microphone to you and allow you to share a little bit what you've been learning from your practice in cleft.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me try to share. It says that I cannot share yet, but thank you for the invitation and thank you for the presentation. So hello everyone, I feel very excited to be here sharing my experience. Can anyone tell me if you are seeing my... Is that okay? Yes, okay. Perfect. So I will share about a mentoring program. In this occasion, a mentoring online program but I want to share with you how this program started and my experience with this program. So I have around 36 years of experience teaching and supervising clinical practices of speech and language pathologists attending patients with cleft palate. I work at a public hospital in Mexico City and at different universities. And sometimes I had a sensation that I was not meeting their needs, the students' needs, because many times the same question came again and again. So when I started my PhD in around 2005, I decided to study the first years in clinical practices. What does that imply and the experiences that are involved in that process? Especially, how do you apply the theoretical knowledge or content in practice? So researching online for my dissertation, I found the New Teacher Center in California. They support new teachers or teachers with limited experience, and they develop a mentoring program for teachers, special education teachers, speech language pathologists. So it's a system for mentors, and they like to prepare mentors for working with the new teachers. So I decided to learn from their experience, and I went to US to 3 workshops. And it was really interesting. I love the program. And I always believe that speech language pathology, as many areas, I'm sure, has 2 main areas. In one side, there is a theoretical content, but in the other side, it's the clinical practice. And sometimes these 2 areas are not really connecting. So I think that many times the professor or the supervisor frequently thinks that once you said something, the students is supposed to apply it right away. And this process does not go that way, I think. It is not just a simple line where the student receives information and is just supposed to do it. So speech pathology in cleft palate, in the methodology I follow, or the philosophy I follow, there are also two areas. It is well recognized that patients with cleft palate has speech problems or are at risk, not necessarily has, but it is started to be recognized that they are also at risk for language problems. And it is supposed that if you work with these 2 main areas in a parallel way, you have better results. So, speech and language pathologists, for speech and language pathologists, conducting an integral intervention, it is not so easy. You have to have a solid knowledge about speech, language, methodology, specific strategies. And what I want to stress is that this is not just for speech pathology. I'm sure this is the same for any area. So speech pathologists with limited experience face different challenges in the process of becoming an experienced specialist, such as you can do sometimes poor evaluations or you lack strategies. And it is well described that maybe you can, or they can develop feelings of despair or feeling. In US, there is a study that says that sometimes it can be like feeling of depression because they don't feel right about what they're doing. So then I started to think, what can I do in order to support my students or guide them in the best way? And the studies found that the support from a mentor can increase professional competence. And a mentor is an expert that accompanies the clinical practice. It's an expert that can walk with you and it's not evaluating you. So a mentoring program, it's an organized learning to teach. It's for preparing the mentors. And it's aimed to boost speech and language pathology satisfaction and professional competence. The mentoring program can support by, these are like the main activities: observing clinical practice, sharing knowledge, studying together, co-teaching, co-planning, modeling, whatever the student needs. So we made a previous study, and the objective was that to study if the speech and language pathology students have a mentor, if that can increase the performance. This study was founded and supported by Smile Train, and it started, I think, in 2012, and it's already published in 2015. So the methods for the study were, we had 18 speech and language students, and they were divided into groups, homogeneous groups. They were equally supervised. They all have a coordinator and a supervisor, and they were followed for a year, for 2 semesters. The only difference is that the active group had a mentor. It was an experienced speech pathologist with training in mentoring. All were assessed at the onset and at the end of the study, and this assessment was performed through an analysis according to an adapted scale made in Louisiana State University, and we adapted for Mexico. So both groups, as a result, they demonstrated significant improvement, but comparing the performance between groups, we found a significant difference between the studies in the active group and in the control group, and the students in the active group showed greater improvement as compared with the students in the control group. These are the tables. And it looks pretty different, I think. So the support and guidance of an experienced mentor in this study seems to enhance the performance. And this is usually reflected in the improvement of the patient also. So we kept building experience. The program, as I said, started in 2012. And we continue with the mentoring program at the public hospital and at Hablarte Integrarte, which is it's a 10 years institution, small institution for providing speech and language pathology to cleft palate patients. And so many SLPs and patients have benefit from this program. And last year, as Hugh said, we started a mentorship program for SLPs in Latin America. In this program participated 8 speech and language pathologists from different countries, from Argentina, from Costa Rica, from Chile. And this was entirely online program. So we provided theory and supervised practice, and we were meeting once a month for 1 year. And at the end, this was not entirely part of the program, but many of them, almost all of them, came to participate last month in a speech camp. So we have reunions once a month online, and they also had personal mentoring sessions, virtually and online also. So these are some of the participants. And I want to share something about some photos about the speech camp in Mexico. So they were working with us, and we were sharing and discussing strategies and assessing for patients and all that. So we applied a survey when they were here in Mexico City, and all of them consider this program and this project as an enriching experience. They think they are left from the mentoring sessions and enjoy the sessions, and they value sharing with colleagues from other countries. So as a conclusion, I think online programs can be developed for a wide range of areas. They are a good option for updating professionals. The mentoring, I think, I'm sure, promotes reflection and discussion of common themes, common interesting things, and they solve and generate doubts, and many times some little crises, but I think this is always good. So if we continue to collaborate and build networks among professionals, we will ensure that more children receive the quality care they deserve, I think. And I want to end, I think I was a little bit running, it's early, but anyway, I want to share that I just read this book, I love it. It's called Grit, The Power and Passion of Perseverance, from Angela Duckworth. And it came to me as a gift in Christmas from my son, because we were discussing a strategy that I've been applying, and it's already published also, that is called Deliberate Practice. And this book talks about it. So, let me tell you a little bit more about the strategy. This strategy thinks about what makes an expert, and it develops a discussion about if it's talent, or it is innate, or it is the perseverance and the practice. And I apply it to articulation in patients with cleft palate. So at the end of the book, in the book, she describes a lot of different studies that she had made. She interviewed a lot of high achievers, persons, and grit relates with talent, attitude, perseverance, practice, determination. So at the end, she studied the relationship between grit and happiness, and she found that grit relates with satisfaction, even in life or in work. It always relates with positive emotions. And she said that a greater person, the more well-being. But the quote I love is she said, it is not that you are born with a grit. You can make your grit grow. And you can make it grow from the inside out, cultivating your interest, your determination, etc. But you can make it also grow from the outside in. And this is I love the word. This is the intervention from coaches, mentor, colleagues, friends that make you really perform better. So developing your personal grit depends critically in other people. So I said, why not support each other to facilitate positive emotions and greater professionals attending cleft palate? I think that these initiatives like this one, to be sharing and to be learning from others and discussing and getting into a little crisis because you need to change something, I think it is always nurturing for all participants. So thank you. I'm not sure if I leave that one there.
Thank you, Carmen Pamplona. We appreciate it. To start, I think you talked about this a little bit off the top, and it definitely connects into your last comments about grit. But why do you think that SLPs working in Cleft might particularly benefit from a mentoring approach, and especially a distance kind of mentoring approach? What makes Cleft a particularly helpful field in order to invest in the mentoring and growth of an SLP?
Well, I think that maybe all areas can benefit from that, because the idea is to not just have a supervisor or something that people expect you to do, but you have someone that is there just for your support, for supporting you. It's not evaluating you, it's not evaluating your results, it's just thinking together to get the best of your practice. And in Cleft, I think that as many professionals intervene in the treatment, and as every area has different things to look forward to, I think it's very good because what you don't see, the other can see it. And this was exactly the experience we had in the camp, where we were all together. So we had the children, and then we had different approaches and different opinions and different things that different specialists will approach in each case. So I think that always makes you grow.
Interesting. And I know we have some of the participants in that, in your speech camp and in the program on the call, so maybe we'll hear them in a second. Tell us a little bit about the technical aspects of this. So you said you met monthly online and then some other kind of follow-ups. What was the actual vehicle that you used to perform some of this mentoring?
So yes, you can do it. I mean, of course, in this case, it's online, but even in Mexico City, I mean, go and try and go and invest all the time going and going forward. Many times it's online. You can do it by whatever, Skype, Zoom. And the idea is, I mean, there are different styles for mentoring also, right? I've heard like there are mentors that are like pushing to see, for example, a video from in the clinical practice. I am not. I said, if they want to observe and discuss one of my videos, or if they want to discuss some article or whatever they think they need, they think they will be useful. So many times they video record their practice, and then we can observe and discuss, and we can assess the children together and look for strategies and look for some references. That's the main approach, I think. So that's a bit of a
particular advantage of SLP, that you can see so clearly how patient interaction is happening. It can be recorded. I mean, it's audio, so people can tell what's actually being said. What was that process like for patients, for you to be invited into some of these sessions virtually? How did that work?
Yes, sometimes they are there. We just even do some mentoring directly from a camp, for example, when you have the craziness of the group, and the other one is standing up and all that. And I think it's very, very good to see that in action. But sometimes you have the videos. I mean, the practice was performed before. And yes, I think that many mentees said, I asked the parents if I can share the video, and most of the time the parents agree, because you will be discussing about their kids to find the best possible option for them. So I'm not sure if I answer your question.
Yeah, that's a great start. So I think we will have a chance to hear from anyone else who's on the call. We have a good number of people. If you'd like to participate in Spanish as well, we do have our trusty colleague Abdon, who collaborated very closely with Maria Carmen Pamplona on this this project as well, who can here to interpret for those of us who don't speak Spanish as fluently. And so the way you can do that is either by typing in the chat feature, and we'll monitor that and ask questions to Carmen Pamplona that way, or if your video is operating, you can feel free to ask a question directly as well. So either way works. So I'll open it to the floor.
Maria Carmen?
Sí.
Can you translate for me? Por favor. I am speak in Spanish, but Maria Carmen translate for me, please.
Go ahead, Marta. Thank you.
And
should I translate?
Oh, okay.
No, let me ask. I can translate.
Ya llegó Karen.
Hi, good morning.
Para nosotros fue una muy buena experiencia.
It was a great experience for us.
Las mentorías no solamente hablaban de técnicas teóricas, sino que además nos ayudaban a modificar nuestra práctica con los niños.
Mentoring wasn't only theoretical part, it also helped us to improve our training with the children regarding therapy, speech therapy.
Cuando Mari Carmen veía nuestros videos y nuestra intervención con los pacientes, podía aportarnos técnicas o cambios en nuestras técnicas que iban en beneficio de nuestros pacientes.
Mari Carmen had the opportunity to see some videos of our treatment, and during that process she sometimes changed or made suggestions about changing our way of treating sort of what kind of problem with that child. So making suggestions. That's Mirta's opinion.
Thank you, Mirta.
My opinion was a little bit, I think I was a challenge for Mari Carmen. I always said to her that I'm the old one and that I had my own manner of treatment and my way of going. So all this kind of speech was for me a little bit overrated, like I'm not going to change. That was my first impression about this workshop. And she did change my way of thinking a little bit. So I'm now trying to use both parts, my old way of thinking and the new way of thinking. And I think that makes us greater and better, that we can see others work and a completely different way of treating children. Mari Carmen has a completely way of treating children that I do. And I don't think that one is better than the other one, but the both together, I believe that's the best one, when you have this both inputs. So I hope that I will keep doing changes during my future work.
La terapia en grupo también es algo muy alentador para los niños.
Speech therapy in group, in children, it's also very good for those to have peers in the same way and with the same problems. So we didn't do that here in Chile, and it was a completely different thing to see in Mexico.
Thank you. So that a few things you've raised that are quite interesting. I mean, the first is, Mari Carmen, your group of SLPs in this case, as opposed to the research that you talked about at the beginning, was focused on some SLPs with a lot of experience. So this was more of an enhancement as opposed to someone who's starting in the field of cleft and making their way without necessarily much support. You also had some SLPs who were very experienced and seeking to be stretched and to grow. I wonder if you could comment a little bit about that as a mentor, what that was like having such a wide range of experience levels in that group of cleft professionals.
Sure. So that was a challenge for me, obviously, and for the rest of the mentors, because we were 4 mentors. But it was very interesting because we all grow always. When you do some mentoring and some intervention, and you have some intervention, you always grow. I mean, it's not like I am standing here like a professor and I am teaching you. So no, it's a collaboration and everyone learns. So yes, I learn a lot. And I think you never stop learning, right? So it is quite interesting to have this kind of interaction.
Great, and I think the second point that was raised was some differences. Obviously, you're a very experienced SLP, and some of the other participants were very experienced as well. Just for the rest of us, would you highlight a few of the things that you brought to the conversation, Maria Carmen, that were different maybe from other people's SLP approaches and that you were able to leverage through the online mentoring format?
So one was that working particularly and working in small groups, that was, I think it's challenge, and it's interesting also to be trying to convince your point of view, right? And trying to give an convincible explanation about what are the benefits from this, which is not in every situation, of course, but trying to see and trying to share what your experience in that point. And the main thing I think is not working only in speech, but trying to work also in language and thinking and all this process that I think for them it's a challenge in school and in every context. I think that that way is the best way we have for preparing for life, our patients.
Great. Well, I'd like to circle back in just a second to the group approach, and you mentioned also the speech camp. I know that in some of the projects I visited around the world, I mean, that's something that many comprehensive cleft care teams are thinking about is how to incorporate group work, or especially for participants who are traveling long distance, patients who are traveling long distances, the idea of the camp. But just before we jump there, if you could say a little bit more about the difference between speech and language, maybe even for people who don't speak English as a first language. What do you mean by the difference between speech and language?
Yes, so speech, going a little bit backwards, I think that you have these two main areas in language, in cleft or not cleft. You have like the foundations of language, all these rules you construct as a child, and these internal rules gave you your structure for functioning of life, for interpreting your environment and all that. And the construction of these rules is something I like to focus in, because the kids can develop better. And speech is what we see. Is the way we articulate, is the resonance, is where you put your tongue, or is the syntaxis, is all these specific things that are easily observed. And in cleft palate, speech has been recognized for treatment, for research, for observing, but the other part has been a little putting behind. No, it is recently starting to be recognized in many parts of the world. But at first, all these years has been just speech. And I think it's important to incorporate both. It's not easy, because sometimes you go more to language, then you go more to, but anyway, I think it's important to keep it in mind.
Thank you for
whatever you need to work to approach both.
Thank you for clarifying that. I'll push it out again to the participants around this idea of group sessions and how patients can make progress in different ways, either through a camp or through these regular kind of group sessions that through the mentoring program there was a focus upon. What are your comments, or what are your experiences or questions about group therapy for speech?
You can use therapy or individual treatment for any child. I still believe that some children will benefit with group therapy, and some children will be maybe better on with direct one-to-one therapy. But taking in account the reality of Mexico or other countries that are very wide open, and the children don't have access on regular basis to therapy, it's a very good way of doing intensity, and therefore a good approach and benefit the child directly and the family. So I wouldn't think that group therapy is for everybody or for any country. Some children will benefit for individual therapy, and sometimes you can use both for one child. Like, for example, what we suggest, Mari Carmen, while we were in the workshop, many children, they had articulation problems, probably those children would be better on if we would take them out of the group therapy, do individual treatment, and then put them back into the group therapy, maybe, like on the same camp, doing both interventions. So again, as Mari Carmen said, for speech and language, you can't divide the two. They work together, speech and language. And again, I believe in therapy, you can't say this therapy is better than the other one. Sometimes you have to make a complement of both. So yeah, that's what I believe.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments about this this use of group therapy or camps in terms of a practice, especially as we were talking about in situations where regular individual sessions is just not feasible, whether because of distance or the cost involved in transportation. What else would you like to talk about in terms of this group approach and how it can be useful?
¿Qué otros beneficios hay en este trabajo del grupo? Creo que la familia se conoce también.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Carolina, please.
I'm driving, so I'm sorry if you cannot listen me well. Yeah, it's at 6 a.m. here, so I'm driving through work. I loved the experience working with all my colleagues from different countries, and it was a challenge for me because it's very interesting how we cannot divide clinics from the rehabilitation part. Sometimes we think that we have to think more clinically, like anatomics and how it works and how the things should be working differently. But when we go to camps, it changed the whole mind. For example, the work group, I didn't expect it worked so good. When I came back to Costa Rica, I tried to apply different techniques, and it worked so perfectly that I didn't believe it worked. I applied different stories and activities to one kid. I didn't work as group thing, and it worked perfectly. So I think it was very, you have to have this experience, like to work with other way of thinkings and to try different things that normally you shouldn't do it. And it worked. It really worked, and it's great. It should be like, we should do this like once a week, once a year.
Thank you, Carolina. So there's two different types of groups that you're talking about. I mean, one definitely is in your practice, the techniques and things that you saw demonstrated, being able to apply that into your practice in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit also about the cohort. So it wasn't just learning from Carmen Pamplona, but there was.
We learned about everyone.
There were
like,
8 different SLPs. Yeah, speak about that idea of having a learning cohort that was in different countries. What was that like for you?
Well, it was very interesting because we, like Pamplona said before, we saw each other once a month. So it was very interesting how we like we saw all the information the same, but the different way we think and we used to practice. So the first one is that. The second one is that most of I think that for me too, like Mirta and Karen are very clinical, and I love that. But when we started working with Pamplona, it was a lot of speech and a lot of stories and a lot of singing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be doing like the click between the clinical and the part of the speech and stories and all of that. And when we go to the camp, all of us supported to make that click work.
That's exciting, Carolina. Now, I'd like to focus.
It was very exciting, actually. We learned about each other a lot, and more than learn, we made a great bond and friendship.
Very exciting. Now, Carolina, I know a little bit about your context, where correct me if I'm wrong, but there are not a lot of SLPs working in speech, and that's
With Cleft?
yeah, in Cleft.
I'm the only one.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but yes, I know that you're the only one really focused in on Cleft.
Well, we
And
are a
that's
small country, so.
That's right. And that's common, I think, in a lot of low and middle income contexts in which a lot of the supporters of the COCP, you know, Smile Train, ABMSS, et cetera, work, is that there are not a lot of SLPs who are experienced who are working in a country.
Yeah. It's complicated.
At the top of the presentation, Pamplona talked about this idea of discouragement and feeling kind of isolated. What would have been some of the alternatives? You know, if you didn't have this online mentoring process, you know, whereby you could connect virtually to experts in other places, you know, some with a clinical.
Yeah.
What were the other alternatives available to you, and how was the online piece a helpful tool?
Well, first, I will explain that Costa Rica, it's a very small country, and some of my colleagues, they do not like the Cleft population because they consider it's a challenge. And really, it is a challenge because you have to think a lot of the patient as an individual. Second of all, if I didn't have the mentoring, probably I would be calling my colleagues from different countries, like the Argentinian ones and Chilean ones, but probably reading a lot of books. I'm very pleased with my mentor because she was 24/7 for me. Even if she was in a party, kids party with the daughters, she will be like having a phone call with me. So she was very, very open with the active communication. So yeah, probably reading, watching videos, or probably calling other colleagues from other countries.
Thanks, Carolina. So it sounds like beyond the technical structure that Pamplona walked us through around monthly meetings and some group sessions, etc. For you, a critical component was being able to ask individual questions, building off of some of the topics that were covered in the group sessions. That connection through email or Skype or whatever was something that was helpful to you in actually applying what you were learning.
Yeah, she used a scale that it's not normally used here in Costa Rica or in other countries, and it was kind of hard to understand it. But then when you start understand it, you can do feedback to the parents, and they will be like, oh, I thought my son or my daughter could not learn this because sometimes the parents think that it because of the Cleft, they're mental retard, and I'm like, no, the kids learn different ways. So that scale helped me a lot to explain to parents and other specialists that the kid doesn't have any other mental development, or it goes like slowly. It's only part of the process, and most of the kids, as all of you know, they go to the clinics a lot and they go to surgery a lot. So it's a process that can be like interrupted, and then the kid will start learning again. So the skill help a lot. It's not easy, I can tell you that, because I had received it 2 years and it's not easy to learn it, but it worked a lot to explain to parents about development. Do not like separate development, like physical development or social development, to language development. It's very complete.
Thank you, Carolina.
Yeah.
And obviously, we know around the world that SLPs are often at the forefront of educating parents because they have that regular connection, because they've seen many cases, that we know that just letting parents know what to expect from a Cleft and helping them dealing with some of these negative stereotypes that are in the community often about Cleft work or Cleft patients is
all
critical.
of the activities that I learned in the camp, I try to place it here and try it with the kids, but individual way. And also I explained to the parents, and they were so happy. Like, you have no idea the use of the stories. They were so happy because the kids want them to bond it. It's like make a bond also, not with the kid it's more like bonding the kids with the parents during all this process. So it's very helpful.
That's great, Carolina, and obviously a great topic for future discussion around working with parents and some of the stereotypes. We have a great question from Pam Sheeran, the VP of Comprehensive Cleft Care at Smile Train. Many of you will know her, and I'll just read it out. Congratulations to Maria Carmen for this work as a global model of care. It's such a practical and also a loving way to support the growth of SLPs. Smile Train has learned so much from this model. Can Maria Carmen also speak to the idea of doing this across different cultures and with people who even speak different languages?
Hi, Pam. Thank you for your question. I think it's great. I think, but I haven't tried yet. I think that the one solution could be in all the countries like Mexico City and all these countries that are in, I don't want to say in very poor situations, but I think that working with experienced speech pathologists and preparing them to be mentors themselves we can reach to many people. And I think doing this across different cultures, I mean, the vision of the mentor is to, as Carolina was saying, is to cover the needs of the people you're working with. So I think maybe not real easy, but I think the mentor has to adapt to the differential, I don't know how to say, to the different cultures and the needs, the different needs. And working in different languages, I mean, if you don't speak the language, maybe you have to find a way to do it. Maybe a translator, I'm not sure. What can you do? But I can tell you that we have in Mexico City a course that started like 5 years ago, and we do mentoring in this program. I mean, we do something similar to what we did with Transforming Faces. So we do the class and then we do the mentoring. And we have people from China, from US, from Spain, from Portugal, and yes, you find the way to do it. I mean, and I think that it's one of the training that the mentor has to have. I mean, look for the way to reach the needs that they have and build confidence and all that in order to, if you have difficulty with language, you can supply it with or another way. I mean, I'm sure you can do it.
Thank you, Carmen. Another comment that I've just received, again, I mean, we're focusing our discussions on low and middle income contexts, but friend Margot Bacall from Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto comments that this model can be applied to SLPs who live in remote areas of Ontario, Canada, which is our province. As some of you know, there are far from the U.S. border, up in remote communities, there's Indigenous people. There's also small communities where there is an incidence of cleft, but it's very far distances to travel. And so she says that she'll share this information with other SLP colleagues working in cleft teams as a way to improve patient care and professional support. Again, that similar idea that Carolina Rivera was talking about feeling isolated, not having a lot of other input, and maybe not even having other SLPs anywhere close by to compare notes with. And so this online idea of having a group that meets and compares notes, has different training, and has different approaches can be really enriching and stimulating and motivating to provide the best patient care. So thank you to Fran for that comment. I think, Carmen, so obviously one component of being able to host this program was your extensive experience in learning as an SLP, but for people in other contexts, in other world, or maybe even in other disciplines, orthodontics or something else, what would help beyond that kind of own expertise to draw upon, but what else would distinguish someone as being able to mentor? What do you need to have as a skill set or an aptitude to really mentor effectively in this kind of project?
I think one of the main things is to be open, to have an open mind. And maybe I sound so heartly, but an open heart, I think. And do not, it is very common, and it happened to me many times. I mean, with my students, when I said, oh my goodness, the same question again, I said, I already say it. Wasn't clear? I mean, what's happening, right? But I think you have to leave your ego on the side and said, yes, I am not meeting their needs. So what does this person need? Many times when when I am in front of a parent or in a school talking about a child or in a mentoring session, I sit and I said, what does this person need? What is what I have to say that can really help this person? So I think you have to be in that mood in order to really see what is he doing, where is he in the development stage, no? What does this person has this hypothesis, and then try to see what is, and try, and maybe it is not, and then go back and talk it like that. Is it helping this, or what do you think you need? I mean,
yeah, I think that's really insightful, Pamplona. Just the idea that it's not as much, inculcating people in your own approach, but that idea of what does the SLP participant need? What will make the biggest impact in their own context, and then being able to stretch and walk alongside. I think that's something that definitely could be applied, not just in SLP, but in other CCC disciplines.
Yes.
We're getting short on time. We could talk much more about that point, but I did want to acknowledge a question from Sharif Imran from India, and I'll just read it. I'm from India and very new to this profession. As of now, I'm facing the issue to encourage parents to attend therapy classes because I know that awareness of SLP is very small in my context. How can I encourage parents to come and participate, join these therapy sessions with their cleft child?
Yes, sometimes it is not easy, Sharif. I mean, you have to be convincing them, and sometimes I understand them that they have to travel 6 hours to get to a speech pathology session. So I think you can be convincing them, and it is kind of sad, but what I'm going to say, but sometimes I convince them because I am going to give them something. So I said, okay, this is important, all that you can say to them. And then you give them something. For example, we have some books, songs, in order to let them know the exact way to work with them. And then when they start to see some changes, they are more interested, and then you can say, okay, if you come, I can give you another one. And you can be working with the child. Because sometimes it is not important for them because they have so many things in their life. I mean, going through in their life. So
that's a great point. I wonder also for anyone else on the call, or for you, Carmen Pamplona, also, I know a lot of the group, the SLPs you were working with were part of very strong CCC teams. And I know I've seen in different places that if it's only the SLP talking about the importance of SLP, well, that has value. And for some parents, it's decisive. But when they hear it from the surgeon, from the orthodontist, from the social worker, when everybody is saying the same message about the importance of SLP, that can really be decisive for parents in deciding to make it a priority. I wonder if that is that accurate, and how have you seen that in practice?
Yes, you are completely right. Sometimes, yeah, in the extreme cases, you have to talk with a surgeon because the surgeon is the person they believe more. So, no, and they want the surgery and they are expecting magic. So sometimes it's like they are conditioned. So you have to go to speech first. And then you have to work to make them love you, and then they believe you, and then they stay because sometimes they're not. And it's not an easy task. I mean, with some patients and some families, you have to be like in a circus doing things in order to bring them.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, that's just, the hour has flown by, and thank you, Sharif, for your question. We do have some places to go from here in order to continue this conversation. I'm going to pass the microphone to my colleague Becca. Many of you have heard from Becca as you've been applying to be part of the COCP or getting information, but Becca is our Special Projects Coordinator Transforming Faces and has a dual hat as our coordinator of the COCP program. So I'll pass the microphone over to Becca.
Hello, everyone. Great to chat with you this morning. We just wanted to give you some other ways that you can get involved and continue this conversation. So one of them is to move to Slack. You've all received an invitation to Slack at this point. Some of you haven't been able to accept it quite yet, and I'm just going to show you here. So I will, after this call, go back and re-invite everyone, so it's fresh in your inbox, and you just have to make a login name, and then you'll get right in there. And if you ever need any help with anything relating to anything with the COCP or with Slack specifically, feel free to email me, info@cleftcircle.org. But once you're in there, you can start, and you'll see this is what it looks like when you're in Slack. All these different channels where people can talk about things that relate to their particular discipline. In the webinars channel, that's where we're going to post the recording of this webinar later on, hopefully today. But yeah, there's articles there that'll help you get started and learn how to use Slack so you can chat with other people who have similar questions or experience that might be helpful to you. So we're hoping that more people will get excited and start using Slack that way. Another thing you can do is recommend a webinar that you would like to see happen next. We're going to take a little break for the summer, but in the fall we'll be back with more webinars after our June webinar. So if you have one, if you would like to offer a webinar, please let us know. Again, it's info@cleftcircle.org. As well, if you have any resources that you think other people should know about, email me and we can put them up on our COCP library website. Or we can send it out in our newsletter that will be happening, coming out in July as well. Also, please feel free to invite colleagues to join the Circle of Cleft Professionals. You can see the SurveyMonkey link there. That's where they can submit their application to us, and we'd be happy to have more people join us. So those are some ways. Again, if you have any other questions or ideas, I'd be happy to hear them. That's info@cleftcircle.org. So like we've discussed already, our next webinar is happening June 11th, and that's with Dr. Giant of ABMSS, and he will be talking about the process for them to move towards comprehensive cleft care and how they use that in their organization. And you.
Well, it's been a delight to have everyone on the call. Thank you so much. From here, again, as Becca mentioned, please join us on Slack, continue the conversation, ask these questions. We have experts around the world who would love to offer some insight and to continue this conversation a little bit like the mentoring that Carmen Pamplona was talking about today. Do send us any resources. We're working on a bit of a newsletter to update people about comprehensive cleft care progress that's being made and learning that's happening around the world. And so look for that in your inboxes in July. And again, please do join us with Dr. Giant on June 11th, 2019 at 8 a.m. Eastern, which we heard in Costa Rica is 6 a.m. And other places is late in the evening. So it is an international forum, and I think we're really benefiting from the richness of this discussion. So a special thank you to Maria Carmen Pamplona today for leading us, for everyone else who participated, and for this big group that's joined us. We're delighted. And so until June 11th, we say see you later, but please be in touch via email. Bye-bye.